Are your people working hard but not reaching their full potential? The problem is not effort, it is development. At the Modern Observer Group, we transform workforce development into real performance. Our human-centered achievement programs help your team think better, communicate stronger, and execute at a higher level. That means higher employee engagement, stronger leadership, and measurable results across your organization. If you want a workforce that performs, leads, and delivers, it is time to invest in your people. Visit modernobserver.com and discover how the Modern Observer Group helps you build a workforce that wins.
Antisemitism rising in Germany. Alberta moves closer to secession. The return of the President's Physical Fitness Award, and more. Welcome to the Raw Naked Truth. I'm your host, Eric Lopkin, and here's the news you need to know. In a social media post last night, President Trump announced he was pausing the U.S. operation to escort ships through the Strait of Hormuz briefly to allow time for an agreement with Iran. Trump's post came just hours after Secretary of State Marco Rubio told reporters that the U.S. was committed to Project Freedom. Rubio and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth also said the fragile ceasefire was still holding, even as Iran continued to attack the United Arab Emirates. Both the U.S. and Iran claimed to control the crucial strait yesterday as maritime traffic came to a near standstill. Russian drone and missile strikes killed at least 22 people and wounded more than 80 others in Ukraine Monday night and Tuesday, according to Ukrainian officials. The attacks came hours before Kiev was due to enact a ceasefire and 3 days before Moscow promised its own pause in fighting tied to World War II Victory Day commemorations. Ukrainian officials said Russian bombs killed at least 17 civilians and wounded 45 others on Tuesday. Attacks the previous night killed 5 people and wounded 39. Ukrainian President Zelensky said Russia could stop firing at any moment and said Ukraine would respond in kind. Russia had announced a unilateral ceasefire for later in the week. Ukraine's government said the latest strikes targeted civilian areas before that pause was scheduled to begin. Germany is facing a sharp rise in antisemitism, with officials warning that Islamist and left-wing extremist networks are exploiting the war in the Middle East to spread anti-Jewish rhetoric, mobilize supporters, and contribute to harassment and violence against Jewish communities. These groups are using the Israel-Hamas war and broader regional tensions as a pretext to amplify anti-Semitic narratives, according to a study by the Hessian State Office for the Protection of the Constitution, which includes accusations of genocide in Gaza and portrayals of Israel as a colonial state. Language authorities say is increasingly being used to justify hostility and, in some cases, violence against Jews. German Interior Minister for the state of Hesse, Roman Prosek, warned that the trend is escalating. Separatists in Alberta declared they now have enough signatures to trigger a vote on the province leaving Canada. The Stay Free Alberta group said Monday it formally submitted almost 302,000 signatures after needing 178,000 names to force the province to consider such a ballot measure. The question of separation could go on a province-wide ballot as early as October, as Alberta Premier Danielle Smith has said she would move forward if enough names are gathered and verified. This day is historic in Alberta history, Mitch Silvestri, the head of Stay Free Alberta, said Monday as he arrived at the Elections Alberta office in Edmonton, leading a convoy of 7 trucks to deliver the names. It's the first step to the next step. We've gotten by round 3, and now we're in the Stanley Cup final. Smith has said she personally does not support the oil-rich province leaving Canada, but she has accused previous federal Liberal governments of introducing legislation that hamstrings Alberta's ability to produce and export oil, which she said has cost the province billions of dollars and noted that she doesn't want the federal government meddling in provincial issues, according to the Associated Press. The World Health Organization said Tuesday it suspects there was human to human transmission of hantavirus on the MV Hondius, a Dutch cruise ship stranded off Cape Verde, where so far 3 passengers have died and 4 others are sick. Images from the ship shows deserted decks and medical teams in protective gear, while its nearly 150 passengers and crew waited another day off the coast of West Africa for evacuation. Cape Verde has refused to allow the ship to dock, but Spain has agreed to welcome the ship at one of the Canary Islands, with the specific port still to be determined, where health officials would conduct a full disinfection of the ship. Hantavirus symptoms include fever, pneumonia, and respiratory distress. The FBI announced Tuesday the arrests of more than 350 child sexual abuse offenders as part of a sprawling nationwide operation. More than 200 child victims were located during Operation Iron Pursuit, which involved all 56 national FBI field offices, as well as numerous U.S. attorneys' offices. President Donald Trump revived the Presidential Physical Fitness Award on Tuesday as part of a push to restore an annual physical fitness test in U.S. schools. Trump signed a proclamation during an Oval Office ceremony with children and professional athletes. The award is tied to the Presidential Fitness Test, which was used in public schools for decades before being phased out under President Barack Obama. The prior test included exercises such as a 1 mile run and sit ups. Students who scored above the 85th percentile for their gender in each component received the award. Trump signed an order last summer to reestablish the fitness test, which was created in the 1950s. Details of the revised test have not been released. Trump said his administration is working to defend athletic traditions and promote excellence and competitiveness. The Securities and Exchange Commission proposed allowing public companies to opt out of quarterly earnings reports and move to semi-annual reporting. The proposal was announced Tuesday. The change would alter a long-standing disclosure practice for U.S. listed companies. Public companies currently provide quarterly reports that give investors regular updates on financial results, risks, operations, and management discussion. Supporters of reduced reporting requirements have argued that quarterly reporting can push companies towards short-term decision making. Critics have warned that less frequent reporting could reduce transparency for investors. The proposal would be subject to regulatory review and public comment before any final rule could take effect. The SEC proposal comes as companies, investors, and regulators continue debating disclosure burdens, market transparency, and reporting costs. The agency's action would not immediately change current filing requirements. U.S. job openings fell by 56,000 in March to 6.86 million, according to the Labor Department's Job Openings and Labor Turnover Survey released Tuesday. Hires increased by 655,000 to 5.554 million, the highest level since February 2024. The increase in hiring was the largest since May 2020. Economists polled by Reuters had expected 6.835 million job openings. Vacancies fell by 318,000 in professional and business services. Openings increased in retail, financial activities, healthcare, and social assistance. The job openings rate eased to 4.1% from 4.2% in February. The hires rate rose to 3.5% from 3.1%. Layoffs and discharges increased by 150,000 to 1.867 million. The trade deficit increased 4.4% to $60.3 billion in March. Goods imports rose 3.6% to $302.2 billion, while goods export rose 3.1% to $213.5 billion. That's the Raw Naked Truth for May 6, 2026. You can catch every episode of the Raw Naked Truth Daily News Brief, as well as our sister podcast, Carnivore Radio, with news analysis and commentary, and the rest of the Xvadio Podcast Network at xvadio.com, the Apple Podcast app, YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, Amazon Music, and other platforms that respect freedom of speech. We'll see you next time.